I have a question which is a very generic one
Yeah.
regarding this Nirebu Nerbu.
Yeah.
So, if I'm reading 18th century poetry or 17th century poetry, should I count with Nirebu and Nerbu or not?
So what they do is like this. You can ignoring Nerbu Nerebu as a special category, you treat U as a vowel, right? And it gets one matra, and therefore it would be Ner.
Yeah.
So Nerbu would be Ner Ner, Nerebu would be Nere Ner.
Yeah.
That's one way of.
But that would completely change the scansion of something written in Ahaval, for instance, right? Because you would have to read
right.
it as him
So
being Muchi.
in Ahaval,
Muchi.
that would be defining feature of Ahaval, and therefore you have to see whether there is Nebu and Nerebu.
Up to forever. I mean, this remains something you need to use when scanning Ahaval.
Yeah, I mean, even in Ahaval, we saw some cases what they call alahirdo. So you let's say that Ahaval, the Tare is Ner Nirai, sorry, Ner Ner Nirai Nirai, right? It's a homogeneous Tare. So if there is any problem in that, you would ignore Wu in scanning. See, in other words, okay, there is no Tale stated in terms of Nerbu and Nerebu. Okay? Nerbu and Nerebu are Urichir of Asaryapa. Right? So when you see Nerbu, Nerebu, then it says that it is Asaryapa. Right. So when you come to Tare in Asaryapa, it is Ner Ner, right? So if the Nindasir ends in Nerbu, that also would be taken as Ner.
Right.
Yeah.
Right? Nerebu also would be Ner. Right? If it creates a problem, then say ignore U.
But I suppose if I understand the question is whether so when people continue to compose, as we were talking about, like in things, we talked about this last time, right? Where in things like suitable poems, people will continue to write in Assyrians, and whether beyond a certain point it actually falls out as a compositional possibility to keep using Nerbu and Nerebu, because it's no longer acknowledged in the metrical theory.
Right.
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 So is any? I mean, again, this is something that we can solve empirically, right?
Yeah, right. I just wondered whether there was an easy question to this, like, okay, you still need to use it for scanning because it's a practice and people do it or not, or whether we need to find out whether they're using it in these poems.
Yeah, I mean, you can use it. My sense is that it would define that the poem is in Assyrian. See, that is one conclusion. And when it comes to define Assyrian in terms of Tare, whether it has Assyria Tare, right, then you would treat it like Ner and Nirai. Right?
I think practically from the other point of view, was your question whether when composing those people would pay attention to Nerbu and Niraibu?
I mean, since I'm not composing, my only question will be while scanning these verses, right?
Because you can scan everything fine from like Tirukovai on without Nerbu and Niraibu.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, that's the point, right? So you ignore.
So yes.
But I have to then leave out the U.
I mean, scanning
as if it is not part of the assay.
Because if it's written with one, then as Anamai was saying, then you scan it as a NAD, but then the scansion rules for the Assyria cease to work, right? Because you no longer have.
No, but still it is Assyrian because I mean, let me put it this way. I mean, it's still Assyrian because the seed divides into Nerbu and Nerebu, right? But for Tare statements, you ignore that
Right.
name
But that's
it.
always
So
the
you
case,
treat
though,
it.
right? That has, excuse me for interrupting, that has always been the case. So it's always been the case that a following Nirai would, I mean, going all the way back to the anthologies, a following Nirai would equal a Nindra Niraibu for the sake of the Tarai, right?
Yeah, that is true. That is, it always takes place. But the difference comes in this way. Suppose you have two asai in Asarya Chi, right? If something looks like three, right, and that possibility comes because of Nerbu or Nerebu, right, then they say that that ignore that and count it as two. Right. To that extent, it would play a role. Right. So you have to keep the two asai condition for Assyrium. So if and then the other condition is Urichi, so it defines that. The third one is when it comes to Talai. When it comes to Talai, you ignore that different. Or you have a rule that Ner is Nerbu and Nerebu is Nere is Nerebu or something, something like that. Right? That's what my sense is.
Okay. Yeah, it just mostly my question come out from the fact that when I sit down and try to scan, I hardly get it right. So I'm just wondering whether, because there are a lot of like short U that I have to ignore, and then that's the whole point of like how it works to scan an Ahaval, or whether I'm doing something else wrong, whether I have to ignore Nerbu and Nirebu, these kind of things. Just because sometimes it will make sense when I look at something to think, okay, that's the meter, and that's how
I think
it
as a
works.
practical matter, you make some compromises, right? So there are certain features which tells you that it is Asariyappa. Then if it is countered by certain other fact, you handle the fact in a different way, right? So it's not a mechanical thing as that, right?
The one problem where the one place where that seems to run aground is with the kind of primary theoretical statement that Nerbu and Nirebu are the Urisia for the meter. So again, if we don't account for them in the scansion, then they can't possibly occur, and so the thing that is a diagnostic feature of the meter doesn't appear.
But
right?
does this definition continue also later on, or is this a
This is just in
Tolhapium?
Tolhapium, yeah.
And so how does the
Tolhapium has two ways of scanning. One is Eluthenudal, right, by letters. So that has a rules. If you have Nerbu, U would be one Eluthu. I mean, anything which has more than one Matrai would be so Eluthu. So U won't be an Eluthu, right, because it's less than one matra. So the problem comes in when you give up that kind of scanning based on Eluthu and comes to C, and also want to have two asais rather than four asais, then this problem comes in.
But what I was wondering is, I mean, I don't know, because I clearly don't know. But in the definition of something like Asirapa on the basis of Nerbu and Nirebu Muvasai Chir, including Nerbu and Nirebu Asai, are the Urichir of Asirapa.
Now, Asaryapa's Urichir is only Yerchir, that is Irasechir.
Okay, so
it borrows.
no, sorry, of
Vanjipa.
Sorry. But then, do we have this definition of this Urichir of Vanji after Tulkapiam?
Yes.
So we do have like Yaparungalam, or later like Yapu treatises talk about the Urichir of Vanjipa, including Nerbu and Niraibu Asai.
Yeah, see, when you say that, okay, when you say that Vanjipa has 60 urichis for them, right? What it means is this. I mean, it is Muvasechi, so it should end in Nirai, but what precedes could be Nirai, Nerebu, all those things are possible. So what is important for Tala is only the last one.
Yeah.
That is Nirai, and that is in opposition to Venba, which has Ner.
Okay.
Right. So it doesn't play a role in scanning, but it gives the diagnostic test in terms of what's the nature of seeds you could have in Vanjipa.
Okay.
Vanjit seed, right? So these are two different things. Right? So the one is the number of seeds which differentiate past, and the other one is the nature of asais. You see in this one, and they also make a distinction. I have not gone deep into it. I mean, that's not in any of the sutras or in, grammar. The commentators say something like nirai idai nerittu cheer. Right? Mm-hmm. So the cheer which ends in ner, but what is in the middle is nirai. Right? Which is different from neridai nerittu cheer. Right? So they also make they also say that the internal composition of cheese also have an effect. Right? Mostly they say in terms of Wosai. Right? They say that a particular internal composition of cheese have a better effect on the Wosai of that pa. Right? Since we are not clear about that, I'm not able to articulate that. Whereas when you come to Tara, it's only the final seed which matters, and the initial seed of the next one, right? Irrespective of whatever the internal composition is. It doesn't matter, suppose you are talking about X and Y, X in an underseed and Y in an underseed. It doesn't matter whether you have before X ABC or BCA or ACB, whatever it occurs, it doesn't matter. But it does matter to define what kind of urichi it is and how it goes to define the pa, right? Yeah. Okay. As long as far as Vanjipa goes, what I call the minimalist grammar is Muvasai and corollary, that is Irusir Adi, and the Talai and the seed should seed, when I say seed, it's a muchir, that should end in Nirai. Right? This is the basic thing as far as the Tara is concerned. Right? The 60 don't matter. Right? See, what matters is the final one, which is Nirai.
Okay.
So that is in up contrast with Venba. Right? So maybe, okay.
The final one in an arti.
Final one in a seed.
In a seed. Okay.
Yeah. So see, if it is muchir, when seed ends in ner and vanjichir ends in nirai.
Okay.
Right.
Right.
And the vanjichir has a flexibility, that is, it ends in nirai. Let's say muchir ending in nirai. Okay, that's a minimalist vanjichir. Right? And when it comes to talai, it could be both onji talai, onra talai. So you could have nirai, ner. See, both are allowed. So this means it combines the qualities of both Venba and Asariyapa, right? Asariyapa should be heterogeneous talai, right? And Venba should be heterogeneous talai, and Asariyapa is homogeneous talai, right? For Asariyapa, it is ner. Nirai Nirai. Whereas Vanjipa allows both. Right? So this also is a factor pointing out that the flexibility of Vanjipa. Right? So these are the basic characteristics of Vanji Adi, let's say Vanji Adi, because Vanjipa could have other Adis also. But the other crucial fact about Vanjipa is that it also consists of internal units. Right? So far, with regard to Asariyappa and Venba, we looked at the poem as a sequencing of lines. So it's a kind of unilinear sequence. Right? Whereas here, the lines are bundled up. Right? So one bundle is one unit, another bundle is another unit. And these two bundles are connected by Tanichal.
Okay.
Yeah. So which stands alone from these two. So this Vanjipa is not viewed as a sequence of lines, right? But they are arranged into units.
Okay.
Yeah. So this suggests a possibility, nobody has discussed that as far as I know, that we could also look at Venba, Asariyappa, which have a different seed arrangement in the final two lines. Right? Maybe that also could be considered as a unit of that, rather than just a unilinear sequence of lines where two lines differ. Right? But with Vanjipa, clearly it is it's a defining defining feature, and it has three units. The first unit doesn't have a name. It starts with Vanjipa, and then it's followed by Tanichal, and then it ends with Suridaham. And Suridaham is the end part of that. We will see an elaboration of this when you come to Kalipa, but here it is Suridaham, right? So the okay, and the interesting point about Suridaham is that it would have Asariya meter. Right.
Okay.
So if you have a Vanjipa, right, the first few lines would be in Vanjiyadi, then Tanichal, and then the remaining ones would be in Asariya Adi. Right. So that is called Suridaham, and Gunasagara, the commentator of Yaparangalam, gives etymology. He relates it to Suli, which is a word, something which turns around or something like that. So it is like you can imagine water flowing when there is a blockade, which is the Tanichal, then the water swirls, right, from the flow. Our modern thing would be that the cone ice cream, you do a swirl at the top of that, right? Yeah. So I mean, the name comes from Sudha. I don't know whether it's a Sanskrit word or not, but they take it from the word Suri. Right?
So Suridaham is usually just one line.
No. It could be three. Let's say three lines or more, right? Okay. Okay. So it's called Asariya Suridaham, and I think the requirement is 3 lines of Asariyam would be there.
Minimum.
Yeah. If you look at the handout, let's look at one Vanjipa. It would make it clear. This is, I think it was page 354 in that. Okay. Okay. பூந்தாமரை போதல் பூந்தாமரை போதல மரத் தேம்புணலிடை மீன் திரிதர வளவயலிடை களவையின் மகள் வினைக்கம்பலை மனைச்சிலம்பவும் மனைச்சிலம்பிய மனமுரசொலி வயற்கம்பலை கயலார்ப்பவும் then நாளும். That is Tanichol. Right? Okay. Then மகிழும் மகிழ்தூங் கூரன் புகழ்தல் ஆனா பெருவன் மயனே. Okay. So let us look at the last two lines. Right? Obviously, it is Irasai. Right? That's not. That doesn't belong to Vanjipa. It belongs to either Venba or Asariyappa. Right? But here it is Asariyappa because of heterogeneous Thalai. Mahilum, is near. Right? Mahil, the second one, is Nirai. Right? I'm sorry. Okay.
So it's actually dissimilar.
Yeah, it is. No, let's see.
And the second and the third see it as homogeneous.
Yeah.
Dun, Kuran.
Yeah, right. It should be homogeneous. So,
so in the final line it's homogeneous.
Yeah, let us take the final line works fine, right? It ends in near and the next one begins with near, right? Yeah. Tal is near, A is near, so that is similar.
But then Na Peru is dissimilar, and Van Mai is similar.
Yeah. Okay. Na Peru. Yeah, right.
But it does seem that the Tarai is like requisite, but not requisite in 100% of the linkages, right? I mean, just in general with the Asiriyappa, right?
Yeah, that is in general. There are you have violations of of that, right?
But interestingly, it has the Muchir Ari in the penultimate line, just like you would expect from a regular Asiriyappa. And it ends in A, like you would expect from a regular Asiriyappa.
So it means the other two criteria of Asiriyappa, that is the penultimate line should be Muchir, which is here, and the final one is not Chir, that is there, and ends in A. It means that only in Thalai you have some violations, right? And the same thing happens with the next one also.
Sorry, but since we are also talking about Vanji, right? If we go to the first lines, 6 lines, which are supposed to be, these are Vanjipa lines, right? So, Punta Marei can be Ner, Nirai.
Near, yes.
And then we have Po
is
Dala
near.
Mara.
Po is near. So the Vanji, as I said, could have either Nirai or near.
Right.
So it doesn't matter what the next one is.
I mean, but I just wonder because, for example, looking at the second line, no, this Tembu.
Tembu
Nalidai. This could be either Ner, Nirai. Or near
it is near. Okay. So there is another condition for Nerebua, right? It should coincide with the word boundary, right? Tembunal doesn't. So Tembu is not Nerbu.
This is near plus Nirai.
Nirai. Yeah.
Okay.
Right. Okay, so here idai is nirai, and then me is ne. So here it is nirai, nirai ne. So that's why Vanjipa is easy, right? You can, you don't have to choose a word which to meet the talai conditions, right? So
So, but you're saying so that Tale, it can be violated, right? Because normally, this is interesting because, in Yendise Tungal, you would expect agreement. That's the very definition of the Tungal.
Why do you say so? Very definition of, I mean, Tungal Vose is for Vanji, right? That is to, you break rhythm at the end of the seed. So Punda Marai, Podala Mara, like that. So this okay, the Tungal Osai. I mean, the Osai is also divided into three, right? One is Yendal Tungal Osai. So the definition of Yendal is when you have homogeneous talai, it is called okay.
Right. Yendise Tungal is defined as agreeing or homogeneous.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So the first, okay. Yeah, the Yendisa is contributed by homogeneous, right? So you should have, let's see.
We have that in
So
four
that,
of
that
the 6 lines.
Yeah, but not everywhere.
Not
That's
everywhere.
what I was
Yeah.
puzzled by, because I thought the very definition of having it there is
because
agreement normally throughout the stanza. That's what Yaparum
Yeah.
Lakariga says, but maybe not.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it
Niklas
is-
has a type of Vanjitale which is disagreeing and is a ner followed by a canisir, so ner nire as being one Vanjitale, which is what we have in the first 2 lines.
Yeah, but if you look at the Tungal, for instance, that's normally, see, it says agreeing throughout the stanza, and that's
this
how I
yeah.
know it.
I mean, is there maybe? I mean,
Maybe
as we see
in
with
the side Tungal.
as we see with the rules about Talai and Asuriya Part 2, it's like it's a probabilistic
It's a benchmark,
thing. I mean,
but yeah.
when you get towards more than 50%, then it achieves the condition.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah, I think so too, I suppose.
But I mean, it's again, it's an interesting thing that again can be proven empirically whether that gets tightened up with
Yeah.
later metrical theory and whether the practice follows the theory. Whether this wouldn't have counted. I mean, this is not. This is from the Apollo
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Yeah, this
I
is
mean,
an
I would
example of Yentise Tungal. It's written on
Yentise.
top of
Yeah.
this, so there are both
No.
of them there. Right?
Yeah, this is both are for the same same
Yentise
thing.
Tungal was
Yeah, that's why I was asking. But the other one too, and there's just supposed to be difference in both. Okay, they're both Kuraladi Vanjika.
Yeah.
So this Ahawal.
Okay, yeah. So benchmark. That's not for ballpark or one of these words.
Or maybe predominant. Maybe.
Yeah, I
so
think
the
that's a one, right?
Do we actually? And do we have a term for that? I mean, for what will
No, I mean there's no. No, I mean the term they use this as well as elsewhere is sirapu, right? If every line has that, it's sirapu, right?
Exceptional. Yeah.
A special, excellence, exalted, whatever. And but the thing is that if there is a deviation, it is not valu. I think they deal with three concepts. Okay, whatever doesn't follow the rule here as well as in linguistic grammar is called puranadai, right, which is an exception. And they have three ways of handling exceptions. One is write a new rule to cover the exception. I mean, that's always we do, right? That is one kind of.
Sasha and I just did that just now, right? I mean, it is a natural human.
Yeah, right. So, I mean, one, good example which Tolgapia gives is that use of past tense in the present sense, like when somebody knocks the door, say one day, right? So he gives that example, so that violates the rule of past tense formation. But if it is in Virevu Karudi, right, he says that if you are indicating that you are fast at it, then you can use the past tense in the present tense. So the second rule would be a Puranada Sutra, right? See, it violates the general sutram of past tense formation, but you could use past tense in the present sense, and that would have a separate sutra, right? So it's a kind of raising the status of exception to be on par with the other sutra. I think this is a legitimate scientific process, right? The other one they say is mayakam, which is plenty of things, right? You see, one which is not expected comes in there, and therefore it is mayakam is accepted. And the third one is varu amaidi, right? There is an error, dosha, but amaidi is there is I think it's mostly comes from commentators by some lesu or by some interpretive technique. They say that this varu is what happened? Accepted. Right.
I think they'll both rejoin when they can. I think it.
Maybe the connection is bad.
Lost the connection.
Or they took off the video.
Yeah, because Talia dropped out a little while ago, then Andrew just dropped.
Okay.
They're looking for exceptions to
Andrew.
So I get so confused.
I know, it's... Yeah, a lot of those rules are not really rules.
I mean, that seems to be globally the case with, and particularly with Asiri Tarai, where it really does seem like it's fine if it has it, but it doesn't, it's not unnatural, it doesn't.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, you find the rigid adherence to Tarai in Venba compared to all other parts. Even there, you have some exceptions to that. Okay, so this gives some evidence to the fact that Vanjipa has Kuraladi, that is 2 Cs, and each Adi has Muchi. I mean, you have evidence. Evidence for that. And then when you go to the next page, you see you have Vanjipa, where you have Sindadi, that is 3C Adi, right? Kodivalana, Kurunirattana, Kurundanana, right? So you have 3C, so that is also is a case of Vanji Adi, right? So at least what the literature says about the 3 subkinds of osai is when it is homogeneous talai in Vanjipa, then that is that's called yendisai, and when it is heterogeneous, it is Ahaval Tungala, he says. Yeah, the second one, Ahaval Tungal Kuraladi Vanjipa, right? So, okay. And when you have this alternate, that is homogeneous and heterogeneous, then that would be the third one, Pirindisai Tungala. And Pirindu is with interruptions or jumping or something, something like that, right? Yeah, okay. So yeah, you can do more work with computers about actually counting these talai, right? Yeah. Okay. So this. Okay. So we saw that. So the I think yeah. So you see that the common size of asayam at the end of Vanjipa is 2 lines, but you also have 3 lines in one of them. So the 2 lines would be the minimalist grammar, right? And there is in a way you can look at it as fusion, right? See, you have Vanjiyadi and then Asriyadi. These two are fused in a particular place. This is different from the Vanjiyadi interspersed with Asriyadi as in the Purananu. Right? So that's a mixture or interspersing, and that's called viravu. Right? So the lines get mixed up, that is one. The other is the lines are bundles of lines have a specific place, right? Then that is that's not called viravu. Viravu, right? Yeah.
Am I correct that, so looking at this verse, with the one that's the example of the Pirindisai Tungal Kurolari Avanjipa, that the scansion in the final line of the Suridaham is weird. Parduvari, Puharve Yon Tarve. So we have to read that final, the penultimate chiyad as Muvasai chiyad. Yeah, we do. Puhal ve yon. We have to read that as a ma.
Yeah.
A ma chiyad. Right.
So you have 4 asai in the first and the last, and the middle one is Muvasai.
Right. Well, it's actually that's also 4 asai. So
Oh,
all 4 lines are Hamajish, but then
yeah, that is also allowed in Asuriya, right? Yeah, right.
And then we just have to read the penultimate chiyad as the Uri chiyad of Vernba, right? Puharve yon.
Puharve Yon is Vensid,
Yeah.
which occurs in Asuriya.
Okay.
Yeah, right. Asuriya allows Vensid, that would be.
Okay.
Yeah, that would be Veravu.
Okay, this is the sky cheer then.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
Kachi with
Yeah.
it. Yeah. Okay. But
That produces a variant, although the variant has the same scansion.
Yeah.
which one?
So he just gives, with the paragraph sign in his Badabetum, he
Yeah.
gives Ihelve Yon, it also
Yeah.
reads.
Same thing.
Yeah.
Right, it just,
Yeah.
yeah. So, okay. But they have another one called Marutpa, which is also a fusion. For example, you could have a poem where the first few lines are in Venba and the last few lines are in Asuriyapa. Right? That's called Marutpa.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a real name for fusion, probably, Marutpa, right? And they discuss why this Vanjipa and Asariyapa is not Marutpa.
Okay.
Right? Well, that is Marutpa. I think the reason is that when you have a fusion between Venba and Asariyapa, they are between 2 categories. Whereas Vanjipa and Asariyapa have a kinship relationship. Right? So their fusion is not called Marutpa. Right? So for a poem to qualify to be called Marutpa, it should be between two categories of part types, right? Right? And see another okay. Another point about that is the Marutpa doesn't become a fifth pa. The pa are still four. I mean, Tamil is extremely conservative in increasing the number of pas. Right? It has been four for 2,000 years. Right? Say why it is so. The argument the commentators give is that it is not creating a new Vosai. What you are doing is you are combining Sepalosai with Ahavalosai, right? So this again points out that Osai is the determining factor. As long as the fusion doesn't create a new Osai, in the sense of a Osai which is neither A or B but is C, it's actually A plus B, right? So that doesn't deserve to be called new pa, right? Yeah. Okay.
But also because this Suridham or this Ahaval Osai verses at the end of the Vanji Pa, these are typical of the Pa. I mean, we have Vanji Adis plus this other Adis in Assyrian, and the Pa is made up of those things.
Yeah.
So you don't really find just Vanji Adis by themselves without the Tanichol and then the Suridaham usually. Okay.
Yeah, right. That's the minimalist grammar argument of these three. Then we go to the last of the pa, Kalipa. Okay. This is a very complex one. For, let me see. I tried to assimilate everything which is said about Kalipa, but still there are very gray areas. I'll say why this is so. One is, if you take Sayurial of Tulhapiyam, Kalipa has the largest number of sutras, right? So that means you will have largest variations in commentaries. So it is, and also people interpret the verse of Tolhapiyam Sutras in different ways. Right? This is one. And the other one is Kalipa seems to be a part type which has given rise to large number of subtypes. Right. So the commentators or later grammarians differ how you classify these things. The modern scholars point out that if you look at the two charts of Kalipa, so the top one is about the classification according to Tolhapiyam, and the one at the bottom is classification according to Yaparingalam. They are different, number one, right? The first one is 4 subtypes and then the 3 subtypes, right? There are other differences, but the more frustrating thing is that they use the same names in a different sense, right? Sure. So you cannot make one-to-one correspondence, right? These are we'll come to that later, how to read these charts, right? Okay. One characteristic of Kalipa is, it seems that it is more closely related to singing than other other ones, right? I mean, the modern term they used is that Tuolinayam, and some kind of phonetic beauty or something like that. It is for singing, and that's also given out by the name Kali. I think it relates to the onomatopoeic word Kalir, which is used to refer to the jingling of anklets in dance, Kalir, Kalir. So it has some close associations with singing. And another word synonym for Kalipa is Murarkai, Mural plus Kai. Mural, we know that it is the sound of bees, right? Muralugal, right? So, so the Kalipa is more on the side of Isaipa, while others are more on the side of Yelpa, right? So that is one distinguishing feature of Kalipa. Then, according to the Tolapia Sutra, which I mentioned earlier, Kalipa is a kin of Venba, right? So there are some reasons why it is a kin of Venba. One is Venba itself could occur within a Kalipa. That's one reason. The second reason is the seeds of Kalipa include Ven seed. I mean, that's not surprising because Asariyapa also includes Ven seed. But it also accepts Ven seed Vendalai. That is, as the Tadai of Ven seed is Ner Ner, right? Asariyapa would have Ner Nirai. See, when it uses Vendalai, whereas Kalipa has Vendalai as well as Ner Ner Tadai. So it is just taking over Vendalai in all its characteristic. But at the same time, the Kalipa seed would have okay. Yeah, so that means that Nirai after Kaichir is specific to Kalipa. Ner after Kaichir is Venba Tadai, whereas this Nirai is so if you compare it with Vanjipa, the Kanichir, that is 3 seed ending in Nirai, is Urichir of Vanjipa. One fact about Kalipa is it does not have its own Urichir. So it's a kind of parasite, right? It takes over the Urichir of others, right? So it takes the Ven seed, but when it comes to collocation, it should be the heterogeneous, that is Nirai, right? And this is called Kalitalai. So the Kalitalai is a Kanichir followed by Nirai, right? So, okay. Then in addition, okay. They say that Kalipa also has Asariya Urichir. So Asariya Urichir or Irasachir with Nerbu and Nirai. Right? So it uses Venba Urichir as well as Asariya Urichir. Right? That is that's a feature of okay. So it excludes only the Vanjichir, that is Moosachir ending in Nirai, Kanichir. That's the only one excluded. So that is specific to Vanjipa. Right? So the Urichir specific to Asariyam and Venba are admissible in Kalippa also. Right? So that makes the difference between Kalippa and Vanjipa in terms of Urichi, right? Okay.
And I'm sorry to keep asking this. I think I've actually asked this exact question before. So just to retrace my steps with Venba. When Venba has its Urichir, so when it has a Kai Chir, so a three SI Chir ending in Kai, then its usual rule of dissimilar Tarai goes into abeyance, and it's similar. So Kai followed by Neya. Okay.
Right.
Yes.
Right. And Kali Tarai differs from that.
Right.
Right. That's the difference between the two, right? Okay. Then okay. But I mean to create a problem. See, the Kalit Talai. Okay, Kalit Talai is Kachir followed by Nirai, right? Differing it. Different from Vensi. But it would also have Kachir followed by Ne. That is just like Venba Vendalai, Vensi Vendalai. Right? So it borrows, it uses the Talai of Venba, but they put a condition that when Kalippa has this Vensi Vendalai, it must have in the same line Kalitalai. That is, a Kalippa line cannot consist only of Vendalai, Vensi. You should have at least one or I think the example they give is more than one. See, so there should be in the line Kalitalai, then Vendalai is admissible. Right? Okay. Okay. So this. The Kalit Talai also, Kalit Sir also is move aside, right? And the line has 4 C's, right? That's the normal thing, that's a minimalist grammar. But Tolhapian simply says that Aravadi Mihudi, right? So you could have larger than analysis. See, and the commentator says that Kalippa would have Aravadi, but it could also have Nediladi and Kali Nediladi. That is longer than Aravadi, that is longer than Natsir. Natsir Adi. That's why later poems we find large, longest Adi, you see, in poems. Right? Okay. Then okay. Then we know that it is Thulalosai, which is kind of jumping. And one modern scholar, like who edited the Kalitohai for Karaham edition, says in his introduction that you will get Turalosai when you have the sequence of Nirai, Ner, Nirai, Ner, Nirai, Ner. Nirai, he says, heavy, and Ner is light. So there is up and down, up and down, up and down. I don't know whether it actually works or not, right? So, okay. Okay. Again, as far as the line structure or sieve structure are concerned, there is nothing distinctive about Kalippa, right? Except Kalit Talai, which is different, which is different both from Venba and Vanjipa. I mean, Asaripa doesn't come into the picture because that operates with the Irasachi. So with Muvasachi, Kalithalai is differentiated from Vanjithalai and Venzir Vendarai. Again, the distinguishing feature of Kalipa, as in Vanjipa, is its internal units. Right. So the internal units are much more spelled out here. It looks like the whole poem is looked at kind of beginning, middle, and end, right? As you would say, short an essay, so you should have 3 parts or something like that. So the whole structure of a poem is not a sequence of lines, but there is an arrangement between the line. So I should also point out to the fact that the different units, see, which constitute Kalipa, are given a set of synonyms for each term. Right? I mean, they are not pure synonyms, but they seem to be named on the basis of the different functions of the different units, right? And that commentators differ among themselves, what it does, what that unit does. So you'll have to keep in mind how all A, B, C, D mean just X kind of thing, right? But the larger names of categories are Adinilai, that's the beginning part, and then Idainilai, which comes in the middle, and then Irudinilai, which comes in. And this is transparent vocabulary, right? So the Adinilai has, I mean, they say that Adinilai has another name, which is Taravu. Okay, before that, I'll say, so there are, okay, from a minimalist grammar point of view, there are 4 units in an Kalipa. One is Taravu, that's the first one, and then you have Talisai, right? And the third one is Tanichal, and the fourth one is Suridaha. Right? So these are, again, I don't want to say that these are obligatory units, because you have variations where Tanichal could be missing and other kind of things, right? But in a kind of minimalist way of looking at it, these 4 would define Kalipa, right?
And they are all in Kali Adi.
Kalipa.
Kalipa, they all make, but none of them uses the Adi or like the
Right.
of another.
So
it's
they
all
have,
Kali throughout.
Yeah, they have Kali Adi.
Oh.
Yeah, they have.
Even the Suridham.
Okay. But as I said, Venba could occur as one of the units, right? Then it would be in Velladi.
Okay.
Right? And Suridham, I had to check whether that could be in Asariyadi. Right. Okay. I'll look at that. So the first part is called before that Vanji, I think I should mention that the minimum lines is 3 and the maximum, there's no limit to that. So when you have minimum Vanjipa with a minimum of 3 adi, see, it would it would have only 1 line in Vanjiyadi, then Tanichal, and then 2 lines would be in Asriyadi, right? So that would restrict its the Vanjiyadi. In spite of that, it would be called Vanjipa, because the first line is Vanji. Okay, so here it is Taravu. I mean, Taravu, again, See, the one problem I find with these terms for different units is that they are all opaque. Right? The meanings is not obvious or transparent. And for some reason, I think they are right, all commentators believe that these are all motivated. So you can reason out why this name is given. And they give different etymologies or different explanations for that. The first one is, let's say it is Taravu. The one meaning of Taravu, according to Tamil lexicon, is what is given. Right? Now, in modern Tamil, you use Taravu in the sense of data, right? But what is given as in a command or something like that. So that tells you that Taravu is a kind of telling what is going to come. Right? So that's the function of Taravu, right?
Taravu is also part of the Padam structure, no?
Which structure?
Padam.
Padam? Yeah, I think I don't know much about that. Music, you have Pallavi, Anupallavi, I don't know how they correlate with that.
There. Am I wrong?
Yeah, I think that's right.
That's right.
Okay, but it has nothing to do with this Taravu.
I think it has everything to do with this title. Yeah.
It's the same.
It's just an older name. It gets repurposed.
Okay.
So then, as I said, it is also called Adinilai because that's the beginning of Kalipa. This also has another name, which is Eruthu, which is the neck or the mane, the back of the neck, right? I mean, Parasira gives a very strange explanation for that. You see, if you look at the torso without the head, that's the top, right? So it should be, it is first. Then what he means by that probably is that the Talai is the whole poem, right? And then the neck is the one, the first. Ilamburna specifically gives an analogy of body, right? So the Suradagam is the feet, and Taravu is the head, right? So I mean, they have some idea of structure of this poem, right? And Suridagam, which we already met with regard to Vanji, is a sort of epilogue. I mean, it summarizes what went earlier, right? So it's so the first one is something like a Payiram, which tells what's going to come, and the last one, Suridagam, summarizes what went earlier. So in the middle, you would have one is Tanichal, right? As I mean, it's also called Idainilai. It also has another name, Adainilai. Adainilai in the sense that it's preceded by something and followed by something. It's stuck in between something, right? So Tanichal never begins a poem or ends a poem, right? It's always in the middle. So that is the Tanichal. And the another one of the four minimalist unit is Talisai. Right? Tar is taken by the commentary, particularly Parasira gives an explanation for that. See, it comes from tar. I mean, he uses the noun taram, which is depth, right? Deep, right? Tar in the sense of low or deep. And so Talisai would be one particular kind of isai, particular kind of rhythm, right? That is that's a characteristic of Talisai. They even use a verb like Taram Pattu Vandadu, right? Something. I mean, something happens to the rhythm, see, when you come to Talisai, right? So the one requirement of Talisai is this unit would have more than one, right? It will be usually three. Right? So you have three things repeating the same theme, right? You would see that. Okay. So this is called Ottalisai. Wo from the verb wo, which Ottalisai is a similar Talisai. Right. Let us look at that example here. So it's page 298, right?
Happy to see that there's citation. So this is actually this is the virutti that I'm just, for my own reason, my own interests. I'm interested to see that he gives citations from the Sahitriam. Because that's this lost work that I tried to trace some of the fragments of.
Okay.
Because I normally think about it, I thought that was about drama. Of course, it could be about drama and be describing Kalipa. Anyway.
Yeah, he says that Kali Urupukku Alavai Seitiyathullum Agatiyathullum Mudindavaru Kandu. So, okay.
I've never heard of the Jayan Murai.
Yeah.
But, okay.
Yeah. So this is, forget about the name of Nerisai Ottalisai Kalipa for the time being, right? So you take this as a Kalipa, example of Kalipa. You see the first one is Tarabu, which is 3, right? And then you have Talisai, which are 3. Right?
Yeah.
And then you have Yenavangu as a Tanichal, and then it answers your question. It's Asuriya Surida, just like in Vanjipa, right? You have at the end, right? So this maintains the minimalist structure of Kalipa. Right.
Oh, and the next Merkol on the next page, it is seemingly not Asiriapa. Anaitorai.
Yeah, it's simply Suridaham, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Vinaytohaye Ittuhai endru.
So, just a question
So
about the
that
Tarisai. Is it organized in couplets?
Pardon me?
You said here we have Ivai Munju Tarisai, no?
Mm-hmm.
So these are 2 lines.
Yeah.
That's the minimum of one Tarisai would be having 2 lines.
Yes. Yeah. I think in the other one you have 3. You have 3.
Okay.
Yeah. So minimum is 2.
Okay.
But that's the way that, for instance, like the Ula is structured around Tarisai couplets.
Yeah,
right. I mean, later, much later, with a different. The same term gets reused.
Yeah. So, I mean, the important thing is it's the same theme which is repeated. Right? It's not the story is moving forward, right? The same theme would be repeated in different ways, right? S.N. Kandasamy conjectures that this was probably the beginning of Padiham, right? You have on the same theme, see the verses repeat, right?
Okay, so basically here like restating of the same question again and again in without actually progressing into the overall poem.
Yeah, right.
So it's content based.
It is content based, right? It is content based, and earlier also when we see that it's not content, but it is how the thing is structured. Right?
Yeah.
It's we are going beyond see Talai kind of distinctions, right?
Yeah.
So it takes different different paradigms see, to understand Kalipa.
Okay.
Right?
So in a way, then the Taravu is somewhat a statement of the theme of the poem.
Yes.
I mean, that is the idea.
It's a statement, and then one content is repeated.
Okay.
Right? And then you end it, and the ending is connected by Tanichal. Yeah.
Okay.
The Tanichal also has another name. They are familiar Kun.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Kun is a Tanichal, and Kun has two senses. One is like an arch; it connects two units, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what this Tanichal does, and also it is the shortest, like dwarf, right? It's always one seer, right? You see, there are other conditions which are, I mean, one is, again, I mean, we are talking about a minimalist grammar, because then you come up with variations and come up with new name for that. So the number of lines of Suridam cannot exceed the number of lines of Taravu.
Okay.
Right? So there is some kind of balance with the beginning and the end.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So that you find here 3, 3, right?
Yeah.
And then the Tanichal comes at the end of Talisai, end of 3 Talisai, right? But there are some you have Tanichal under each of Talisai also, right? So one Talisai Yanavangu, one Talisai Yanavangu, and then another Talisai Yanavangu. But the minimalist one is to have the Yanavangu. And Angu is the more common Tanichal here.
And in the latter case, is it the return to this question about content basis? Because I mean, I think of those as the like the dialogues. So do those usually have a change in perspective or a change in speaker when there's
exactly. I mean, then we come to a new name for that. I'll come to that. I mean, it looks in some ways like this is a basic structure with 4 units, but you can mix it in different ways, like as you do with playing cards, and then you get a new game, kind of thing. So, okay, then. Okay. So if you okay. So when you okay, then you have I have noted here that the Suridham could be in Kalipa or in Asiriyappa or in Venba. It could be any of those things, right? Okay. 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 So, so then you have sub classification of Kalipa, right? Okay, basically in the sense that the common way of subclassifying Kalipa is classifying them into 4. Right? So in the chart you will see that Ottalisai Kali, that is 1. and another is Kali Venpattu, and the third one is Kochaha Kali, and the fourth one is Ural Kali. Okay, these are the four subtypes of Kalipa. So here there is difference of opinion whether Ural Kali is a separate subtype or not. There is a view that it is same as Ottalisai Kali. Right? The Ural Kali, as Whitney just now said, has the structure of question and answer. Right? Ural is this kind of tit for tat of
and it has this structure in the Talisai.
In the Talisai, the Talisai would be of that kind, right? Okay. So it would have the structure of one statement and a response to that. I mean, it's very similar to Amane, the question and answer point and counterpoint. Perasiriya compares this Ural Kali specifically. He says to dialogue in a play. He says Nadaga Cheyul Pola. Right? So that's the structure of Ural Kali, right? Okay. So the argument against that is that it is you have one Ottalisai, that is where all are same. Say all are statements. Let's say the another is Ural Talisai. So it is a point and counterpoint kind of thing. So that is a different. Okay. So this leads. Okay. So this leads to a situation where you would have a Kalipa without Surida. Because when you have point and counterpoint, there is no conclusion to that. Right? You just leave it at that. So when you don't have Suridham, you won't have Tanichul also.
Okay.
So you will have only Taravu and Ural Talisai, right? Okay. Okay. And Shanmugadas in his Tamirin Pavadimung points out that Ural Kali becomes superfluous in a sense. So it is treated as one within Uttalisai. Right? I mean, it's a different, but it becomes a sub kind of Uttalisai, not on par with that. And according to Shanmugadas, there is no Ural Kali in Bhakti literature at all. Right? So even in Sangam, it has a small percentage of that. See, what is the largest percentage of Kalipa in Sangam is the Uttalisai. Kalipa. So, okay. So that's why you will find in this chart from Yapuringalam there are only three. See, Ural, he doesn't recognize Ural Kali as a separate subtype of Kalipa, right? Okay. Then And then among okay, so in the chart which and this is from Jayaraman, see this chart, see where Ottalisai Kali divides into two. Mudal Nilai Ottalisai Kalipa, Tevar Paravum Ottalisai Kalipa. Okay. So, see, the one problem is some commentators raise the level of this, so it becomes on par with Ottalisai, right? So Ottalisai would be one, and the second second one, but okay, rather than subdivision of Ottalisai, it's obvious that it is classified on the basis of the content. Tolapin clearly says that the Talisai Kalipa is for Ahapata. Right? But it also can come for, that's what they say, Tevar Paravum Uttalisai. For devotional songs also you could have that. So if you accept that, then it's a division based purely on the content of the Kalipa. Right. Not on the basis of any structural feature, right? So the on this basis, see, when you elevate the Tevar Param Ottalisai Kalipa, then the first one is called Ahanilai Ottalisai Kalipa. Ahanilai, since it is better fit for Aham themes of poem. So it's called Mudal Nilai Ottalisai Kalipa because that's the primary, that's the most common one in Sangam. So that's the first one, and because of the content, it's also called Ahanilai Ottalisai Kalipa. It's also called Nerisai Ottalisai Kalipa. Yeah. I don't know the reason for calling it Nerisai, but it also has another name. So Nerisai, Ahanilai and Mudalnilai would refer to the same kind of Kalipa, which is Ottalisai, Ottalisai Kalipa. Okay. Then the next one, let us I'm taking it in a different order. The other one is Kochaha Kalipa. Okay. Okay. So this is Parasiriya Nachanakane take it to be a subtype of Ottalisai, but here it is given as on par with that, right? I don't know the pros and cons of different ways of classifying these things. There is no sutra in Tolkapian saying that Kalipa has 4 types or something like that, right? Okay. Okay. So this. So the Kochaham probably you can gloss it something like the non-standard, in the sense that it may not have all the 4 units, right? Or it could have other units, right? So so it differs from the standard, the minimal structure of that. That is, maybe it relates etymologically to kocha, which is not the standard one. Okay. Okay. then okay. So then also this would include poems where you have two taravus instead of one. That is, you introduce a poem twice, kind of thing, right? So this is yeah. So. Yeah. Yeah. So let's see, look at Kochakali poem, how it looks here. Okay. There's nothing. So, yeah, okay, and there's nothing of this kind here, right? The next category is Kali Venba or Kali Venpat, right? So this is Kalipa, which has an exclusive Venba meter unit, right? Okay. So it is like Venba, it has 4 lines, right? And it okay. And interestingly, it could also dispense with the internal units. So the question would be, why is it it is Kali? It's like a Venba.
And it would look like a Venba when it
yeah, it looks like a Venba and reads like a Venba, right? Okay. The thing is, it's a Venba which will have Kali Tale.
Okay.
Right? So we saw that Venba is very rigid, it doesn't allow any other Tale. So when it allows another Tale, you call it by that name, not Venba, as a Kali, but it has Kali with Venba characteristics.
Okay.
Right. So you accommodated
like
that.
Socialism with Chinese characteristics.
Right. Right.
I mean, is it possible? This is kind of a devil's advocate.
Yeah.
Is it possible that it's so called because there are Venba stanzas in the Kali Dohai?
Yes.
That's why.
Yeah.
I mean, potentially.
That is one, but it could. See, we already saw that. Okay. Okay. I think we saw that Suridham could be in Asariya meter or Venba meter, but also from Suridham it could extends over to other parts of Kalipa. Okay. So when Asariya meter extends beyond Suridham, that is the feature of Ural Kali. Right? So there the question is whether it's Asariyam or Kali. Right? Because you would have the Talisai there, it's called Kali rather than Asariyam. Right? Whatever the meter the meter is. So similarly, here also you would have Venba as Suridham, but it could also go beyond the Suridham. But the difference is it would have Kalitare also. Right? Okay. Okay. And the other one, they say that, I mean, this is, okay, I don't know what you think. So they say that when you say Kali Venba, right, it should have only Aham themes. Right? But we have Aham themes Venba, right? So Rafi himself says that Kaikilai could be in Venba, right? Okay. So, okay. So this. So what it seems. Just for statistics, Kalitohai has 150 verses, 8 of them are in Kalivenba. Right. So the majority are Uttaris, Kalipa. And also they point out that when you have more of Venba lines in Kalipa, you don't have what you have in Ural Kali, that is question and answer type of thing. It's more Sepalosai comes in. So it's a more kind of statements rather than a dialogue kind of thing. I mean, it seems to me that what connects all kinds of Kalipa subcategories would be the singing, right? This is for singing, and then you bring in the other types here, right? Okay, Kunasagara, that is the commentator of Yapurungalam, makes a specific condition that in Kalivenba the last line must be in Kalithalai. Not just Kalithalai could come in that, but the last line should be in Kalithalai, right? Okay. So this makes Veerasurya to claim that Kalivenba is a kind of Venba. Right? So you add Venba as a subtype of Kalivenba as a subtype of Venba rather than as a Kalipa, right? So you see the kind of picture is not a clear-cut divisions of Pa. It is weighing of different characteristics in a Pa, right? Depending on your disposition, you would say, okay, this should go to Venba, this should go to Kalipa. And the various characteristics are not only the structural features, but also the content feature. So one could look at Kalipa as a kind of giving an overall framework, right? And within that, the different prosodic structures could come in, right? And depending on their relative weight, right, you could say that this is Kali and Venba, and this is with Vattadisai or without Uragali and all kinds of things. I think this is the best I could do to synthesize the various kinds of discussions about Kalipa. Right? I mean, it seems to me obvious that Kalipa is not a homogeneous Pa or monolithic Pa. Right? It includes many kinds of things inside it. Maybe that's one reason for its popularity in later period. Right? It can do many things within the framework of Kalipa. Right? Something like the modern architect do. You have the skeleton of the building. You make all internal renovations. Right? Then it still remains as a Gothic building. Right? Right? Whatever is inside. Right? So I will try to read more about this discussion, see if any more clarity is there. I will share with you. Right? This is my minimalist understanding of Kalipa.
Yeah, it's very useful. For me, for example, like after all of these discussions that we had, it's the first time I really understand how different these paths are, like how different they look, what kind of like wildly different texts they generate, and the kind of violence that it's made to them at some point when they actually, the stanza becomes the thing that you want in all of this never-ending Virutam poems. Like, so it just, they cover a range which is much larger than I thought before I actually went into thinking about them. So that at least was
in the next meeting I will introduce some additional units which could go in Kalipa. So you would have seen that Ambodharanga, Vannaham, Orubohu, and all those things, how they fit in within the Kalipa.